There's something happening to women over 60 that almost nobody talks about. It doesn't strike all at once. It sneaks in slowly, quietly, day by day. And little by little, it starts stealing energy, confidence, even independence. Most women don't see it coming. They think it's just normal aging. But deep down, there's more to the story. Let me ask you something. Why is it that some women in their later years seem so alive, so full of vitality, while others slowly fade, feeling weaker, lonelier, more disconnected from themselves? What really makes that difference? Is it just luck? Is it genetics? Or could it be something far more simple? Here's the truth most people never hear. There's one part of self-care that almost every woman ignores. And when it's neglected, the consequences touch every corner of life. Not just the body, but hormones, mood, identity, even the way a woman feels about her place in the world. In my 20 years as a gynecologist, I've seen it again and again. Women who thought they were just getting old. Women who didn't realize the changes they felt weren't inevitable. They were preventable. And when this is ignored for too long, the impact can be far more devastating than you'd ever imagine. That's why I want you to stay with me. Because at the very end of this video, I'm going to share the most powerful truth of all. The one nobody talks about. And the one that could completely change the way you see yourself after 60. Before we go on, take just a second to like this video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell. Because what you'll hear today may change not only your health, but also your sense of who you are for the years ahead. Now let's begin with the first and perhaps the most overlooked consequence: the gradual loss of vaginal and clitoral function. When intimacy and self-intimacy are neglected, the body begins to change in ways that many women are completely unprepared for. The tissues of the vagina and clitoris are incredibly sensitive. They thrive on blood flow, on stimulation, on being used. But when that stops, these areas begin to weaken. Slowly, circulation decreases. The tissue becomes thinner, less elastic, more fragile. This process is called atrophy, and it doesn't just cause discomfort, it changes the very way a woman experiences herself. Imagine this. What used to feel alive and responsive now feels dull, dry, or even painful. For many women, even something as simple as sitting for long hours or wearing tight clothing becomes uncomfortable. Over time, this lack of function doesn't just affect the body. It chips away at confidence, intimacy, and joy. Let me share the story of Carol. She was 67 when she first came to see me. She whispered when she spoke, almost ashamed, and told me she hadn't felt like herself in years. She believed she was broken. But what was really happening was something countless women face in silence. Her tissues had weakened from lack of circulation and stimulation. She had begun avoiding closeness with her partner, not because she didn't want love, but because her body no longer responded the way it used to. This is the physiological reality. When the body is ignored, it adapts, but in the wrong direction. The muscles weaken, the nerve endings become less responsive, and the once rich blood supply that kept tissues strong begins to fade. But here's what most women don't realize. This decline is not simply old age. It's not a one-way road with no return. With the right care, many of these changes can be slowed, even reversed. The body is resilient, but only when given attention. Every small act of self-respect, of self-attention, counts. And yet, the story doesn't end here. Because what happens in the body is only half the picture. there's something even more profound happening beneath the surface. You see, intimacy and self-care don't just affect tissues and circulation. They set off a chain reaction inside the brain. Each act of closeness, each moment of connection, releases a flood of powerful hormones. Oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, the very chemicals that bring joy, calm, and a deep sense of belonging. So here's the bigger question. What happens when those hormones are no longer released? What happens when the brain is deprived of the chemistry of intimacy? The answer is far more surprising and far more serious than most women could ever imagine. And that's exactly where we're going next. When we think about intimacy, most women immediately picture the body, the physical part. But the truth is, intimacy doesn't just live in the body, it lives in the brain. Every touch, every moment of connection, even moments of self-care, set off a cascade of powerful chemical messengers that shape how you feel every single day. The most important of these is oxytocin. Often called the bonding hormone, oxytocin is what gives you that sense of closeness, of warmth, of belonging. It lowers stress, it calms the heart, it even helps regulate blood pressure. But when intimacy disappears, oxytocin levels plummet. The result? A woman may begin to feel restless, more anxious, or oddly detached from the people around her, even those she loves most. Then there's dopamine. This is your motivation chemical. It's what makes you look forward to tomorrow, what gives you that spark of curiosity, that energy to get up and do things. Intimate moments naturally release dopamine, but without them, dopamine gradually declines. And when it does, life can begin to feel flat, routine, even meaningless. Some women describe it as losing their drive, or feeling like nothing excites them anymore. And finally, endorphins. These are your natural painkillers, your built-in antidepressants. They're released during moments of intimacy, exercise, laughter. They flood the brain with feelings of lightness and relief. But when intimacy is neglected for too long, endorphin levels drop. Pain feels sharper. Mood dips lower. The world just feels heavier. I remember a patient named Gloria, 72 years old. She told me she felt as if a gray cloud had settled over her life. She wasn't sick, at least not in the way she imagined illness. But she had no spark. She had stopped gardening, stopped laughing the way she used to, and felt disconnected from her husband, her children, even from herself. When we looked deeper, it wasn't her heart or her bones that were failing her. It was the silent absence of these hormones, starved by years of neglecting her own intimate health. And here's the painful truth. Most women never connect the dots. They think their sadness, their loss of energy, their lack of motivation is just aging. But in reality, it's their body crying out for a chemical balance that intimacy naturally provides. So let me ask you, what happens to a woman's sense of self when her brain is deprived of oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins for years? What happens to her vitality, her identity, her joy? The answer becomes clear when we move to the next stage of neglect. Because these changes in the brain don't just stop at mood, they begin to weaken the body's very foundation, its muscles, its strength, its control. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. When we talk about aging, most people imagine wrinkles, gray hair, maybe a slower step. But very few think about what's happening to the muscles hidden deep inside the body, the pelvic floor muscles. These muscles are like a hammock, supporting the bladder, the uterus, and the rectum. They're essential for control, stability, and even for intimacy itself. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When intimacy and self-care are ignored, these muscles weaken at a shocking pace. It starts quietly. A little leak when you laugh. A small accident when you sneeze. At first, you might brush it off as nothing, but over time, the leaks become more frequent. The control you once took for granted begins to slip away. For many women, this loss is more than physical. It's humiliating. It pushes them into silence, into avoiding social situations, into pretending nothing is wrong. Let me tell you about Joan. She was 70 when she first admitted what she had been hiding for years. "Doctor," she whispered, "I don't go out much anymore. I'm afraid of accidents." She had stopped going to church, stopped meeting friends for coffee, even avoided visiting her grandchildren. Why? Because the weakness in her pelvic floor had left her feeling trapped in her own body. Joan thought it was the end of her independence. But here's what most women don't realize. The pelvic floor isn't just about bladder control. It's about circulation, stability, even intimacy. When neglected, the muscles become weak, blood flow decreases, and the nerves lose sensitivity. This means not only incontinence, but also less pleasure, less connection, less vitality. And the cruel part? Many women believe it's just their fate. They think, "I'm old. This is normal." But the truth is, the pelvic floor is like any other muscle in the body. When used and cared for, it can stay strong. When ignored, it withers. Think about it. The muscles in your arms or legs grow weaker if you stop moving. The same thing happens inside. And that weakness doesn't just affect the bladder. It changes posture, stability, confidence. Some women even begin to walk differently because of it, which only accelerates decline. Every time these muscles lose strength, a woman loses more than control. She loses a piece of her freedom. And freedom is something no woman should have to surrender quietly. But here's where the story takes a deeper turn. Because when the body begins to fail, when hormones fall silent and when muscles lose their strength, the impact doesn't stop in the physical world. It moves into something far more painful. The heart, the emotions, the very sense of who you are. So let me ask you, what happens when a woman not only loses her physical strength, but also begins to lose her identity, her connection, her reason to feel alive? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next part. When the body begins to change, when hormones fall silent, when muscles weaken, there is another layer of loss that few people dare to speak about. And yet, it may be the most devastating of all, the emotional impact. Because when a woman starts losing her physical vitality, it's not just her body that feels it. It's her heart, her spirit, her very sense of identity. I've seen this so many times in my 20 years of practice. A woman comes into my office, not only struggling with dryness or incontinence, but with something far deeper. She looks at me and says, "Doctor, I don't feel like myself anymore." And when she says those words, I know exactly what she means. Gloria was one of those women. At 74, she was intelligent, funny, and kind. But she carried a heaviness in her eyes. She told me she had slowly pulled away from her friends, stopped attending family gatherings, and no longer felt excited to wake up in the morning. She said, "It's as if I've disappeared from my own life. I'm here, but I'm not really living." This is the emotional reality of neglecting intimate self-care. It creates a chain reaction of isolation. Women begin to avoid closeness with their partners, convinced they can no longer respond the way they used to. They distance themselves from their friends out of embarrassment or shame. And slowly the walls close in. But it doesn't stop there. When a woman loses her connection to her body, she often loses her connection to her identity. She may think, I'm no longer desirable. I'm no longer vibrant. I'm just old. And those beliefs don't just hurt emotionally, they accelerate decline physically. Because when the mind gives up, the body follows. The saddest part is that so many women suffer in silence. They don't talk about it with their doctors. They don't share it with their friends. Sometimes they don't even tell their own partners. They carry the weight alone, convinced that this is just the price of getting older. But let me be very clear. It is not. Aging does not mean losing your spark. It does not mean surrendering joy, pleasure, or vitality. And it certainly does not mean giving up on yourself. So here's the question I want you to think about. If emotional decline is not inevitable, if loneliness and loss of identity are not natural parts of aging, then what can a woman do to fight back? What steps can she take starting right now to reclaim her body, her confidence, and her joy? That's exactly what we'll uncover in the next part. Practical, powerful strategies that women around the world have used to rediscover themselves and feel alive again. After everything we've explored so far, the changes in the body, the hormones, the muscles, and the emotions, you might be wondering, so what can I actually do? Is there really a way to turn this around? The answer is yes. And this is where the story shifts from decline to renewal. Because here's the truth. Your body is remarkably resilient. Even after years of neglect, it has the ability to respond, to strengthen, to heal. But it all begins with a simple decision. The choice to care for yourself intentionally and consistently. Let me start with something many women underestimate. Gentle reintroduction of self-care. This doesn't mean overwhelming changes or complicated routines. It means taking small, deliberate moments to reconnect with your body. For some women, it's as simple as setting aside quiet time once a week to explore their own comfort, to bring awareness back to parts of themselves they've ignored. At first, it might feel awkward, but over time, it becomes healing. Next, let's talk about exercises for the pelvic floor. You've probably heard of Kegel exercises, but what you might not know is how transformative they can be when practiced regularly. Just 5 minutes a day, squeezing, holding, releasing, can rebuild strength in the muscles that support your bladder, uterus, and intimacy. Stronger muscles mean better control, better circulation, and yes, more sensation. I remember Denise, a 69-year-old widow who told me she felt like her body was slipping away. She began a simple daily routine, 5 minutes of pelvic exercises in the morning, plus a weekly practice of self-intimacy. Within 3 months, her incontinence improved, her sleep was better, and, most importantly, she felt like herself again. She said, "Doctor, I never thought I could feel this alive at my age." Then there's the power of creating weekly rituals. Margaret, 72, decided to treat her body as if it were a garden. Every Sunday, she dedicated an hour to herself, sometimes a warm bath, sometimes gentle stretching, sometimes intimate exploration. She called it her renewal hour. Over time, this simple practice shifted her mindset. She told me, "I stopped seeing myself as an old woman fading away and started seeing myself as a woman still full of life." The strategies don't have to be complicated. In fact, the simpler they are, the easier they are to maintain. A few minutes of exercises, a little time for yourself, a gentle routine that says, "I matter," My health matters. My joy matters. And here's the beautiful part. Every step you take, no matter how small, sends a message to your body and your mind that you're not giving up, that you're still choosing vitality, that you still deserve joy, connection, and love. So ask yourself this: if such small, consistent actions can bring back strength, confidence, and even intimacy, what would your life look like 6 months from now if you started today? And as we move forward, we'll bring all of this together. Because beyond biology, beyond muscles and hormones, there's a deeper truth waiting to be embraced, one that speaks to your very soul. We've talked about biology. We've talked about hormones. We've talked about muscles. But now, as we come to the end of this conversation, I want to take you deeper, to the heart of what this really means. Because this isn't just about health. It isn't just about aging. It's about identity. It's about freedom. It's about remembering that you are more than your years, more than the changes in your body, more than what society wants you to believe about getting old. So many women have been told, directly or indirectly, that after 60, their bodies no longer matter, that intimacy no longer matters, that joy and vitality have an expiration date. But let me tell you this, clearly and without hesitation: there is no expiration date on being fully alive. I've seen women in their 70s, even their 80s, who chose to reconnect with themselves and discovered a level of freedom and happiness they thought was gone forever. And if it was possible for them, it is possible for you. Think about what we've uncovered together. Ignoring intimate self-care doesn't just affect your body. It changes your hormones, your mood, your muscles, your confidence, your independence. But the opposite is also true. When you choose to care for yourself, even in small, simple ways, you send a powerful message. I still matter. My health matters. My joy matters. This is not about going back in time. It's about moving forward with strength, with dignity, and with love for yourself. Every breath you take, every small act of attention, is proof that your story is not over. In fact, some of the most meaningful, joyful, vibrant chapters of your life may still be waiting to be written. So, as we close, I want to encourage you. Take good care of yourself. Reclaim your body as an act of self-love. Reclaim your vitality as an act of courage. And never forget that you deserve joy, intimacy, and freedom at every age. Now, if this message spoke to you, do something powerful. Don't keep it to yourself. Like this video so more women can see it. Leave a comment and share your own story, because you never know who you might inspire. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the conversations that can change your health and your life. And if there's a woman in your life who needs to hear this, please share it with her. Because together we can break the silence. Together we can remind women everywhere: your body is still yours, your joy is still yours, and your life is still yours to live fully, beautifully, unapologetically. Take good care of yourself. You deserve it.